In Spain, we have a really fun tradition which we call el bote. El bote is literally it's a jar or a boat, but and for this context, it's a jar, and it signifies it's a common fund. So, for example, it's a Friday night and we're all going out to for dinner, drinks, whatever, and maybe we're getting together a handful of us, five, six, seven, whatever, 10, and we'll all put in a common jar in a common fund. I'll put in 20, 30, 40 euros, whatever it might be. We put it into the common fund. And then everywhere we go moving forward, we pay out of that common fund. So then you just forget about money for the rest of the evening until the fund runs out. And either that means our fund ran out or we have to replenish the fund. But that management system, which seems silly and a common sense to a great degree, of managing common funds for a specific activity with a specific group of people in a set amount of time, it's brilliant because it avoids all of these problems that you have sometimes when you do the same thing, but oh, did such and such pay? Oh no, they're transferring you their Venmo or whatever, or Cash App, or they're using all whatever app is the popular one today to send you the money to compensate for it. Tahamas. Someone doesn't end up paying, another person ends up picking up the tab for the person that didn't pay, and things end up being not at all equal and just a mess. And someone usually gets upset because the same thing happens to them every time. They end up paying more than they should have because someone is trying to get away with not paying. So, money, like sex, should be talked about often, often, often. Yes. I don't know if you can talk about money too much. I'm sure you can. You can do everything in excess. But we generally don't talk about money enough. We don't talk about money enough in our families unless your parents were really intentional about talking about finances, giving you financial literacy. The people that had that growing up, I can probably count them on the palm of one hand. Most of us did not have that, to some or to worse, I mean, to better or worse detriments. Obviously, the how that played out for each of us is entirely different. But money should just, it needs to be a frequent conversation about how are things? What's going on? What's the situation? What's the situation? Because when it's not, then you get these really ugly surprises. And it's a huge, huge, huge source of conflict. Because if it is personally, think about your personal finances, which might be fantastic, congratulations, or they might be a hot mess. Let's work on it. Let's work on it. And as we decide to take our hot mess or our fantastic feats into a relationship, it makes it complicated because now it's not just you, it's you and someone else. And if you have kids, it's you, someone else, and kids, and so forth. So today we're going to do discussion points, which are mostly self-reflection. Not really, but they are, in order to talk about money with your partner, you have to reflect about money with yourself first. So discussion points and self-reflection, and then logistics. Just some best practices around some suggestions around how to manage money with your partnership. And this will obviously be very flexible because the situations of your situation might be very different, especially you started out as just two working adults that move in together, or maybe you don't move in together, but you move in together and then you decide to have kids, but then one of you stops working to take care of the kids. The situation's obviously evolving. As sex, as your body, as everything, things evolve, change is constant. So we must talk about what are our values and our priorities along the way. So discussion points, discussion/self-reflection. What are the habits, values, and priorities that you have around money? First of all, what are they for you? What are the habits? Are you just a spender? You just spend. It doesn't matter how much you make. You just are a professional spender. Are you a hardcore saver? You don't know how to spend. It's like as if it was a curse to spend money. What are your habits? What are your values? And this is very difficult when you haven't done it because it's going to bring up everything from your childhood of what you heard about your parents, what you felt when you were a kid with money, what your first experiences were about and around money. If you haven't done this work, brace yourself, but we have to because money is just a reality of this realm. We need it, whether it's entirely digital or physical. And please let's not let physical money die. It's an entirely different conversation. But we will need a form of a tender in order to interact and to buy and sell things. So money is going to be important. You will have goods that you need to buy. Society as it's built right now will still be maintained at least for another 100 years based on the systems that we have today. So money is important. So what values do you have around money? What do you believe? Is money good? Is money good? I like money. Is money good or is money bad? What is money for? How important is money in your life? Is money your driving force? Is it one of your values, for example? We talked about values in the beginning. Is it one of your values? Is it, power, money? Is that how you measure success, maybe? Is that link there for you? So to think about these things for yourself, and then what are they in your partnership? And then what are your priorities? What are your priorities around money? Is it your goal to just be able to retire when the state says you can retire? Or is your goal to perhaps be able to retire 10 years earlier or 15 or 40 or next week? Whatever it might be, what are your priorities around money, around finances that you need to think through, feel through, and then have this conversation moving forward? Shared expenses. Shared expenses might be obviously the rent, might be utilities, might be a car, there might be food expenses. What are some shared expenses that you have with your partner that maybe they should be shared expenses, but they're not yet, or maybe they will be shared expenses so you can foresee into the future that, we're living separately now, but we want to either buy something or rent something. How are you going to go about that? Think through what shared expenses, how you want to manage that. And also big expenses. Shared expenses, it's a monthly, bi-monthly, a couple times a year, weekly, if it's the grooming of the pets, those are shared expenses. But big expenses, they're usually at one hits. And it might be once a year, maybe one every 5 years. It might be an emergency, a common emergency fund versus just your personal emergency fund. It might be vacations. It might be retirement. It might be things to manage aging parents or school for the kids. And I'm talking about university and so forth, not primary or secondary school. Those are big expenses that require planning, that require saving on a regular basis in order to upfront them when they come your way. So those are discussion, self-reflection points. And now logistics. Logistics as to how are we going to manage this thing called money between us? So one thing that I want to suggest is to try to keep things fair, if not equal. For example, we're going on holiday. We're going on holiday to some remote island, and I make more than my partner. Let's say I make significantly more than my partner, and we have to save for this holiday. We have to save for this holiday. It's just a good discipline for us as a partnership to save for this holiday in order to pay for it. And we've decided, okay, we're going to save just respectively. We're going to save 10% of our income to meet our budget goal. Okay, 10%, same percentage for each of us. It's obviously a great deal more for me than it is for him because I make more than he does. However, it's fair. It's 10%. So it's 10%. But I feel it as much as he does. So it's fair, but not equal, depending on what the situation is. And, it could be the inverse. He could make 3 times more than I do. To fair, but not necessarily equal, because if we make it equal, sometimes it's not going to be fair, and it might feel abusive, especially when there's a big discrepancy between what one partner makes and versus the other. 2, expectations. Oof, oof, oof. Expectations around money. This plays a huge role when it comes to gender and cultural roles, and I mean cultural culture, because for example, I'm from the global south, and being from the global south, there is a cultural expectation. And for me, I mean, not necessarily for me as how I live it, but in my culture, in which the man must provide. The man must provide. The man must pay for everything. The man must provide. He must be the breadwinner. That role exists. I mean, that that cultural role exists for the man. That archetype exists. So if I'm from the global south, and if I had not done the work that I've done to still to to liberate myself, to rid myself of all of these layers, I would still be looking for that in my partner. And that would be my expectation. It would be my expectation, no doubt about it. As such, even if it's 2024, it would still be my expectation. So if I meet someone at a bar in Copenhagen, and hee hee ha ha, we hit it off really well, and he's totally progressive, then the Scandinavian countries are the most progressive countries on the planet, at least generally speaking. He's thinking, we're going to be fair, we're equals, we're going to share things half half, and da, da, da. And I'm thinking, yo, no way, we're not going to share half half. You're going to pay for everything. So that might be perceived as he might perceive that as she's trying to take advantage of me, or she's trying to she's just after my money, or she's a gold digger. And I could be a gold digger. It's like it could legitimately just be after his money. But in this particular case, or in this particular example, it's not the case. It's just my cultural expectation that the man is going to take care of it's going to take care of my physical expenses in our context of a relationship. It doesn't mean that I won't work. It doesn't mean that I don't earn my own money, but it does mean that if we go out to eat, he's going to pay, or if we go on holiday, he's going to pay, or if we have kids, he's going to pay for the kids' school, that he's going to pay for the house. That would be my expectation. This exists, folks. This exists. So let's assume it exists. Let's label it, and let's talk about it clearly before it becomes an issue. When you're dating someone from a different culture than yours, and they haven't been in your culture, in the culture that you met them in for a very long time, please, 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 please do not assume you understand where they're coming from. Do not assume that they understand where you're coming from, because they don't and you don't. So you just have to talk about it. And it might be uncomfortable. They might not be used to it. It doesn't matter. It's better for you to have the conversation, because you need to have the conversation, versus assuming that, we're all progressive and modern, and we're mostly around the same age, so that clearly they don't have all those hangups that their grandparents. No, they probably still do. They probably still do. And that goes for East and West, North and South, and it lives there. So let's label it. Let's label it. Am I allowed to work? Am I not allowed to work? Should I not work? Should you work? Let's label these things. Let's call it out, and create some order and harmony and general expectations. It doesn't mean that I might have a preference for a man to take care of all of my financial needs. Maybe that's still my preference, but I understand that I live in a context, and I want to be with you, and I don't need you to pay for everything. So there's a change there in order for us to come to a happy medium in which both parties are actually comfortable with what we're creating and where we're moving with money. Money plays a big role in our relationship. So please talk about these things, label it out, and go through that process. Let's avoid resentment. Third reminder, let's avoid resentment by creating clarity and foresight. And that means with these big expenses. And it plays into the theme about cultural roles and so forth. But when we're talking about big expenses, or when we're talking about kids, things that this resentment can often come from the part that feels obligated to meet a demand that would not otherwise have been met if they weren't there, but they felt it was pushed upon them, versus we wanted to have kids, and we had talked about that we wanted to have kids, and that when we would have kids, I would not work. We talked about this. So if we talked about it, then it's not a surprise when that moment comes and we have little bambino, the little bambino, and I decide that I'm not going to work for the next 3 years to take care of the little bambino. We've talked about this, so there can't be resentment because we talked about it. There might be resentment for other things, but we don't want that anyway. So we're working on communication to avoid that. But we don't want to create resentment around things that, you had to fork the bill of, taking care of the house, all the expenses for 3 years because I wasn't working. No, we want to avoid that by having clarity and foresight and having these conversations early on to work through these things. And lastly, I would encourage to have one shared account for big expenses and for each party to have separate accounts. We need to learn how to manage our money in the event that one of the parties doesn't. We need to learn how to be good managers of money. There's 4 areas that I've identified with money. You have the generating, like how do I generate income? You have the management. How do I actually, the 1,000 euros, I'm going to use it here, the management of money. Then you have savings, putting money away, and then you have investing. Of those 4 areas, you might be really good at generating money. You're a machine. You make money grow on trees. However, you don't know how to manage it all at all because you spend it, you don't know where you spent it, you basically leave it at a bar or put it somewhere, you put it in some random investment. You just don't know where your money goes. You don't know where the management of your money is a mess. Some people are really good at saving money. They're just every week I'm saving 5 euros or 20 or 100, whatever it might be. And some are excellent at investing. I find the right investment vehicles. I know, I watch, I read on them. Whatever your strengths are around money, it's important we need all 4 of them. We want all 4 of them if we want financial liberty, which we talk about in the pretzel wheel. But having a shared account means you have a shared pot in which, the house, maybe the rent, the utilities, the school, the kids for the school, the big expenses, the vacations and so forth are put. And so you have that shared pot, no conflicts there. And then you can manage your own. Sorry, there is a mosquito in my face. And you can manage your own separate accounts you can manage your own separate accounts for how you want to work on your own financial goals, because you have joint goals and then you have your own goals. You should know how to manage your money. We need to know how to manage our money because if your partner is not there in the future, for whatever reason, you cannot be financially literate. Many of us, I have been financially literate for many years, and it's been a journey to gain financial literacy. We have to do that work. And financial literacy, since there are 4 areas, you might have gained really good financial literacy on saving and saving vehicles and the discipline of saving, which is more than anything, it's just a discipline. But the other areas are still lacking. So shared account and separate accounts so that we can all be working on our financial acumen. See you next week.